My wife told me she loved me every single day for 6 years. She also lied to my face every single day for 4 of them. And honestly, I still don't know which one hurts more. My name is Daniel, and I'm 32 years old. I had a stable job, a modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs with a little backyard, and a wife named Caroline, whom I believed was my perfect match. We had been married for 6 years at that point, and together for 8 if you count the 2 years we dated before I proposed. When I met Caroline at an event, I walked over and introduced myself because something about her caught my attention. We talked for a while, and by the end of the night, I knew I wanted to see her again. We did so a couple of times before things got serious. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. During that time, we talked about everything that mattered. I was always upfront about wanting to be a father someday. It wasn't just a casual preference for me. It was something I had dreamed about since I was a teenager. I grew up watching my own dad. He was my hero, and I wanted to give that same experience to a child of my own. So when Caroline and I started getting serious, I made sure she knew exactly where I stood, and she didn't hesitate. She told me she wanted the same thing. She said she had always pictured herself as a mother, that she wanted at least 2 kids, maybe 3 if we could afford it. I proposed on a Saturday evening in October, right in her parents' backyard during a family dinner. Her whole family was there, and when she said yes, everyone cheered. We got married the following spring in a small ceremony at a local church. We were surrounded by people who loved us and wished us well. I genuinely believed I was starting the best chapter of my life. After the wedding, we settled into our little suburban house. We spent our first year of marriage fixing things up and making it feel like ours. Every decision we made seemed to point toward the future family we were going to have. After the first year of marriage, we started trying to have a baby. Caroline went off birth control, or so she told me, and we began the process that so many couples go through. We were excited at first, treating it like an adventure. Every month felt like a new opportunity, and we would joke about baby names and argue playfully about whether our first child would be a boy or a girl. But then the months started piling up. 3 months passed with no pregnancy, then 6, then a year. The excitement slowly turned into concern, and the fears eventually became a low-grade anxiety that neither of us talked about openly, but both of us felt constantly. The disappointment became a monthly ritual. I lost count of how many times we went through this cycle. The hope, the waiting, the crushing disappointment, and then the determination to try again. Each negative result made me question myself more. I started wondering if something was wrong with me. If maybe I was the reason we couldn't conceive. I quietly scheduled an appointment with a fertility specialist without telling Caroline because I wanted to rule myself out as the problem. The tests came back normal. My sperm count was healthy, my motility was fine, and the doctor said there was no medical reason on my end that would prevent pregnancy. I felt relieved but also more confused than ever. If the problem wasn't me, then what was it? That question haunted me for months, and I never found an answer. Until one ordinary Tuesday evening, 6 months ago, when everything I believed about my marriage came crashing down around me. I came home early that day because I felt sick. Usually, I would have texted Caroline to let her know, but my phone was almost dead and I figured I would just surprise her. I pulled into the driveway around 4 in the afternoon, which was about 2 hours earlier than usual. The house was quiet when I walked in, and I assumed Caroline might be upstairs. Set my bag down in the kitchen and headed toward our bedroom to change out of my work clothes. As I walked down the hallway, I noticed the bathroom door was slightly open, just a few inches, enough to see movement inside through the crack. I wasn't trying to spy on my wife, I was just walking past, but something made me pause. Through that small gap in the door, I saw Caroline standing at the sink with her back partially turned. She was holding a small pill bottle, and I watched as she quickly popped something into her mouth and swallowed it with a handful of water from the tap. Then she shoved the bottle into her makeup bag. The whole thing took 5 seconds, but it stuck in my brain like a photograph. When Caroline stepped out of the bathroom and saw me standing there in the hallway, her face changed. For just a split second, I saw something flash across her expression. It looked like fear or maybe guilt, but it disappeared so quickly that I almost convinced myself I imagined it. She smiled and asked what I was doing home so early, and her voice sounded perfectly normal. I told her not to worry. Then I asked her what she was taking just now, trying to keep my tone casual, even though my heart was beating a little faster than usual. Caroline didn't miss a beat. She told me it was just her allergy medication, that she had been taking it daily because the pollen count had been high lately. She said it so smoothly that I nodded and accepted it without question. We went downstairs together and started making dinner, and the conversation moved on to other things. But later that night, lying in bed next to her, I couldn't stop replaying that moment in my head. Something about her reaction bothered me. The way she had rushed to hide the bottle. The flicker of panic on her face before she covered it with a smile. None of it matched the casual explanation she had given me. I told myself I was being paranoid. Caroline was my wife, my partner, the woman I had entirely trusted for years. She had no reason to lie to me about allergy pills. I pushed the doubts aside and tried to forget about it, but over the following weeks, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I started paying closer attention to things I had never noticed before. Caroline always took her so-called allergy medication in private. I never once saw her swallow those pills in front of me. The bottle was never sitting on the bathroom counter or in the medicine cabinet where we kept everything else. She kept it hidden, always tucked away in her makeup bag or her purse, places where I would never casually stumble across it. And whenever I happened to walk into the bathroom while she was in there, she would tense up slightly, her shoulders stiffening for just a moment before she relaxed again. I wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation. Maybe she was just a private person about her medication. I was reading too much into normal behavior because I was stressed about the fertility issues. But the doubts kept growing, feeding on every small observation, every tiny inconsistency that I had overlooked for years. Something was not right in my marriage, and I was finally starting to see the cracks in the foundation I had believed was solid. The weeks that followed that bathroom incident were torture for me. I went back and forth between trusting my wife and trusting my instincts, and the two were constantly at war inside my head. Part of me felt guilty for even suspecting Caroline of anything. How could I doubt someone who had been by my side through everything? But another part of me kept reminding me that something did not add up. Allergy medication does not require secrecy. People do not hide antihistamines like they are contraband, not unless they have something to hide. I decided I needed to know the truth, whatever that truth might be. One morning, about 3 weeks after I first saw Caroline with those pills, she left for work before me. I usually left the house around the same time as her, but that day I pretended I had a late start. I kissed her goodbye at the door, watched her car pull out of the driveway, and then I went straight upstairs to our bedroom. I opened her closet and started looking through her things. I needed answers more than I needed to feel like a good husband in that moment. I searched through her makeup bag first, but the pill bottle was not there. I checked her nightstand drawer, her jewelry box, and the pockets of her jackets hanging in the closet. Nothing. I was about to give up when I noticed an old purse sitting on the top shelf of her closet, one she had not used in years. It was dusty and pushed to the back, almost like it had been forgotten. Something told me to check it anyway. I reached up and pulled it down, unzipped the main compartment, and found nothing. But then I noticed a small, zippered pocket on the inside. I opened it, and there it was. A small, orange prescription bottle, the kind you get from a pharmacy, with a white label wrapped around it. I pulled the bottle out and read the name of the medication printed on the label. The name meant nothing to me. It was some long pharmaceutical term that I could not pronounce and had never heard before, but I knew it was not any allergy medication I had ever seen. I grabbed my phone from my pocket and typed the name into the search bar. The results loaded within seconds, and I felt the floor drop out from under me. The medication was not for allergies. It was not for headaches, blood pressure, or any ordinary condition. It was a fertility blocker, a contraceptive drug specifically designed to prevent pregnancy by stopping ovulation altogether. I read the description over and over because my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. I scrolled through article after article, hoping to find an alternative explanation or another use for this drug that would make sense. But every source said the same thing. This medication had one purpose and one purpose only: to make sure a woman did not get pregnant. I sat down on the edge of our bed because the room felt like it was spinning. For years, we had been trying to have a baby, and the entire time, Caroline had been preventing precisely that. Every tracked cycle, every carefully timed attempt, every month of hope followed by disappointment. It was all a lie. She knew we would never get pregnant because she was making sure of it. She watched me suffer through the confusion, self-doubt, and heartache of unexplained infertility, and she never said a word. She let me believe something was wrong with me or with us, when the only thing wrong was the secret she swallowed every single morning. I thought back to everything we had done in our desperate attempt to become parents, and each memory now felt like a knife wound. I thought we were a team working toward a shared goal. Now I realized she was just performing, going through the motions of something she had no intention of actually achieving. We had changed our entire lifestyle based on recommendations for couples trying to conceive. I gave up alcohol for months at a time because I read somewhere that it could affect sperm quality. I switched to boxer shorts instead of briefs because tight underwear supposedly raises testicular temperature and reduces fertility. I took zinc supplements and vitamin E capsules every morning because an article told me they might help. I did everything I could think of to increase our chances, and Caroline watched me do it all, knowing it was pointless. The fertility appointments were the worst memories to revisit. Through all of it, Caroline was right there beside me, holding my hand in the waiting room, rubbing my back when I came out of the sample collection room looking embarrassed. She told me I was brave for doing this, that she appreciated how much I cared about our future family. When the results came back, and the doctor said my numbers were perfectly normal, Caroline squeezed my hand and said that was great news, that it meant we just needed to keep trying. She looked me in the eyes and said those words, knowing full well that no amount of trying would ever work as long as she kept doing whatever she was doing. We even talked about IVF. After 3 years of nothing, we started researching more aggressive fertility treatments. In vitro fertilization seemed like the next logical step for a couple in our situation, where neither partner had any identifiable medical issues, but pregnancy still was not happening. We looked into clinics together, compared success rates, and discussed whether we could afford the cost. The treatments were expensive, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars per cycle, and there was no guarantee of success. But I was willing to drain our savings if it meant finally becoming a father. Caroline sat next to me during these conversations and nodded along as if she were equally committed. She asked questions about the process, about the timeline, about what the injections would feel like. She played the role of the hopeful wife so convincingly that I never once suspected she was relieved we had not started yet, that every delay was a victory for her and a tragedy for me. The humiliation I felt after finding out her deception was unlike anything I had ever experienced. I do not know how long I sat there before I finally moved. It might have been 10 minutes or an hour. Eventually, I stood up and walked downstairs to the living room, still holding the pill bottle like evidence at a crime scene. I did not go to work that day. I called in sick, which was not even a lie because I genuinely felt like I might throw up at any moment. I sat on the couch in the dim light of our living room with the curtains drawn and waited hours for Caroline to come home. I had no idea what I was going to say to her. I rehearsed different versions of the conversation in my head, trying to find words that matched the enormity of what I had discovered. But nothing felt adequate. How do you confront someone about a betrayal this complete? How do you ask your wife why she stole 4 years of your life and let you suffer for something that was never real? The hours crawled by slowly as I waited for Caroline to come home from work. Around 5:30 in the evening, I heard the familiar sound of Caroline's car pulling into the driveway. My stomach clenched as I listened to her footsteps on the front porch, the jingle of her keys, the click of the lock turning. The front door swung open, and she walked in with her usual cheerful energy, calling out hello as she set her purse down on the hallway table. She had no idea that her whole world was about to collapse. She walked into the living room expecting to find it empty, only to find me sitting in the dim light staring at her, the pill bottle resting on my knee. Caroline's smile faded immediately when she saw my face. She asked what was wrong, why I was sitting in the dark, and if something had happened. I did not answer right away. I just held up the pill bottle, letting her see it clearly, and asked her a straightforward question. What is this? The transformation in her expression was something I will never forget. Her eyes went wide, then darted to the bottle, then back to me. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She stood frozen in the doorway of the living room, and in that silence, I had all the confirmation I needed. If the pills were innocent, she would have laughed and explained. Instead, she looked like someone who had just been caught committing a crime, because that is precisely what had happened. She lowered herself into the armchair across from me slowly, as her legs could no longer hold her weight. Her purse slid off her shoulder and dropped to the floor, but she did not pick it up. She just sat there staring at the bottle in my hand, and I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out what to say, how to spin this, whether there was any possible way to talk her way out of it. I waited. I was not going to make this easy for her by filling the silence or asking follow-up questions. She owed me an explanation, and I was going to sit there until she gave it to me. The confession came slowly at first, in broken fragments that did not quite form complete sentences. She started by saying she was sorry, that she never meant to hurt me, that she knew this looked bad. I told her to stop apologizing and start explaining. I asked her directly whether she had been taking fertility blockers, and she nodded, unable to meet my eyes. I asked her how long, and she whispered, "For years." I asked her why, and that is when the absolute truth finally came out, ugly and raw, and nothing like the woman I thought I had married. Caroline told me she had never wanted children. Not ever. She said the idea of pregnancy terrified her, that the thought of her body changing and stretching and pushing out another human being filled her with a dread she could not explain or control. She said motherhood felt like a trap to her, a life sentence of responsibility and sacrifice that she had never signed up for. These feelings were not new. She had felt this way since she was a teenager, watching her own mother exhaust herself, raising kids, and losing her identity in the process. Caroline had decided long ago that she would never put herself through that. She would never become a mother. I listened to all of this in stunned silence, trying to make sense of how the woman sitting in front of me could be the same person who had talked so excitedly about baby names, nursery colors, and teaching our future kids to bake cookies. I reminded her of those conversations and asked her how she could have said all those things if she had never wanted children in the first place. Her answer made my blood run cold. She told me she had lied. When we were dating, and I talked about how much I wanted to be a father, she saw how important it was to me. She knew that if she told me the truth, if she admitted she never wanted kids, I would have ended the relationship. And she could not bear to lose me. She said I was the kindest man she had ever met, that I treated her better than anyone she had ever been with, and that she convinced herself she could learn to want children if it meant keeping me. She thought that love would change her, that my enthusiasm would become contagious over time, and that eventually she would wake up one day and actually want the family I dreamed about. But that day never came. The love she felt for me did not change her fundamental feelings about motherhood. So instead of telling me the truth, instead of giving me the chance to make an informed decision about my own life, she went to a doctor and got a prescription for fertility blockers. She told the doctor she was not ready for children yet, but wanted a reliable method of contraception. She did not mention that she had a husband at home who was desperately trying to get her pregnant. She kept this secret for years, watching me suffer through the emotional devastation of unexplained infertility. She held my hand at doctor's appointments and nodded along during conversations about IVF and pretended to grieve alongside me every month when her pregnancy test came back negative, and the whole time she knew. She knew exactly why we could not conceive, and she chose to let me live in ignorance rather than risk losing me. When I finished asking my questions and the silence settled between us, Caroline started crying. She slid off the armchair and onto her knees on the living room floor, reaching for my hands with trembling fingers. I pulled back instinctively, not ready to let her touch me, not after what I had just learned. She stayed there on the floor, looking up at me. What followed was her attempt to justify these years of betrayal. I sat there and listened to every word, even though each sentence made me feel sicker than the last. Caroline swore she had been planning to tell me the truth. She said it was never supposed to go on this long, that she always intended to come clean eventually. In the beginning, she told herself she just needed a little more time to figure out how to say it. Then months turned into years, and the lie grew so big that confessing felt impossible. She kept waiting for the right moment, the perfect opportunity when I would be calm and receptive and somehow able to hear the truth without hating her. But that moment never came, because there is no good time to tell your husband that you have been secretly preventing the pregnancy he desperately wants. So she kept pushing it off, telling herself she would do it next month, next year, after this holiday or that anniversary. The right moment became an excuse she used to avoid the conversation entirely, and before she knew it, she was trapped in a lie she did not know how to escape. She told me over and over again how much she loved me. She could not bear the idea of seeing disappointment in my eyes, of watching the love I felt for her turn into resentment or disgust. She convinced herself that keeping the secret was a form of protection, a way to preserve our happiness and shield me from a truth that would only cause pain. Caroline begged me to understand that her deception came from love, not malice. She insisted she never meant to hurt me, that every pill she swallowed was accompanied by guilt and self-loathing. She described lying awake at night next to me, hating herself for what she was doing, but feeling too afraid to stop. She said the longer the lie continued, the harder it became to imagine telling the truth, because the truth had grown into something monstrous that would destroy everything we had built. In her mind, she was not sabotaging our marriage. She was trying to save it, even though she now understood how twisted and backwards that logic sounded. She reached for my hands again, and this time I did not pull away. I let her hold on to me while she sobbed and made promises I no longer believed. She said she would do anything to make this right. She would go to therapy. She would work through whatever fears had led her to this point. She would address the anxiety around pregnancy and motherhood that she had been running from her entire adult life. She suggested couples counseling, someone neutral who could help us communicate and rebuild. She even said that, with enough time and professional help, she might change her mind about having children. Maybe her fear could be overcome with the proper support and motivation. She looked at me with desperate hope in her eyes, waiting for me to say something that would indicate I was willing to try. Part of me wanted to comfort her, because 6 years of loving someone does not disappear overnight, no matter what they have done. Seeing her in this much pain brought me no joy or satisfaction. I did not feel victorious or vindicated. I just felt empty, tired, and profoundly sad. But another part of me, the part that had been lied to and manipulated for 4 years, could not forget what she had done. Her tears were real. Her pain was genuine, but her words felt hollow against the weight of everything she had put me through. She talked about love and protection and fear, but all I heard were excuses. She made a choice every single day to deceive me, and she kept making that choice even when she watched me suffer. That was not love. That was selfishness dressed up in romantic language. The days after that confrontation were some of the worst of my life. I moved into the guest bedroom that same night, unable to lie next to Caroline in the bed we had shared for years. The thought of being that close to her, of pretending things were normal while my entire world had collapsed, was more than I could handle. I grabbed a pillow and a blanket and told her I needed space. She did not argue, just watched me walk down the hallway with fresh tears streaming down her face. Sleep did not come that night, or the next night, or the night after that. I found myself trapped in a cycle of anger and grief that rotated without warning. Some moments I was furious, my hands shaking with the urge to break something. Other moments I felt crushed by sadness, overwhelmed by the loss of the future I had been planning and the marriage I thought I had. The two emotions would swap places without any predictable pattern, sometimes within minutes of each other. I would be feeling numb and empty, and then suddenly rage would surge through me so intensely that I had to leave the room just to avoid saying something I could not take back. I was going to work, sitting at my desk and staring at my computer screen without really seeing anything on it. My coworkers noticed something was wrong, but I brushed off their questions with vague excuses about not feeling well. The hardest part was the doubt that crept into everything I thought I knew about my relationship. If Caroline could lie about something this significant for 4 years, what else had she hidden from me? I started replaying our entire history together, examining every memory for signs of deception I might have missed. When she said she loved me, was that true? Or was it just another manipulation to keep me compliant? When she talked about our future, did she mean any of it? Or was she just telling me what I wanted to hear? The foundation of our marriage had been revealed as rotten, and now I could not trust that any part of the structure built on top of it was solid. Every sweet moment, every loving gesture, every whispered promise in the dark now felt tainted by the possibility that it was all part of a performance designed to keep me fooled. I contacted a divorce lawyer about a week after the confrontation. I did it quietly without telling Caroline because I needed information before I made any final decisions. The lawyer explained the process, the timeline, the division of assets, all the practical details that feel so cold and clinical when your heart is breaking. I took notes, asked questions, thanked her for her time, and when I hung up the phone, I realized that my marriage had ended 4 years ago without my knowledge, and I was only now finding out. Caroline continued to try to win me back during this time. Every day brought new attempts to repair what she had broken. I would come home from work to find notes on my pillow, handwritten apologies that went on for pages. She cooked my favorite meals, even though I barely had an appetite and could not sit across from her at the dinner table without feeling sick. She promised to start therapy immediately, said she had already researched psychologists who specialized in anxiety and fear around pregnancy. She offered to give me complete access to her phone, email, medical records, and anything else that would help rebuild the trust she had destroyed. She was trying so hard, putting in more effort than I had ever seen from her, and none of it made any difference. You cannot repair a house by repainting the walls when the entire foundation has crumbled. The problem was not something that could be fixed with gestures, promises, or even professional help. The problem was that I no longer knew who my wife was, and I was not sure I ever had. Friends and family began to notice that something was seriously wrong between us. I did not know how to explain the situation to any of them. The truth was so painful and humiliating that I could not bring myself to say the words out loud. How do you tell people that your wife has been secretly preventing pregnancy for years while you went through the emotional torture of unexplained infertility? How do you admit that you were fooled so completely for so long by the person who was supposed to be your closest partner in life? I gave vague answers about marital problems and needing time to figure things out, and I could see the confusion and concern on their faces, but I was not ready to share the whole story. The specific pain of being deceived by someone who claimed to love you is hard to describe to anyone who has not experienced it. It is not just the anger of being lied to or the sadness of losing trust. It is the realization that the person you love did not respect you enough to let you make your own choices. She treated me like a child who needed to be managed rather than an adult who had the right to complete information about his own future. Her explanations about love and fear revealed a fundamental truth about how she saw our relationship. She was the one in control, the one with all the information, the one pulling the strings. And I was just the husband who trusted too much and questioned too little. After several weeks of this emotional chaos, something finally shifted inside me. The fog of confusion and conflicting emotions started to lift, and I began to see my situation with a clarity that had been missing since the moment I found those pills. The issue was not whether Caroline and I disagreed about having children. Couples face that kind of disagreement all the time, and many of them work through it successfully because they communicate honestly with each other. They talk about their fears, their hopes, their non-negotiables. They make compromises or difficult decisions about compatibility, but they do so together, as partners with equal access to the truth. That was not what happened in my marriage. Caroline agreed with me about having children. She agreed enthusiastically, and then secretly made sure it would never happen. She did not give me the chance to work through this with her or to decide for myself whether I wanted to stay in a childless marriage. She stole that choice from me and replaced it with a fiction that I lived inside. The destruction in my marriage did not come from differing desires about family planning. It came from years of systematic, deliberate deception. She had thousands of opportunities to come clean, thousands of moments where she could have respected me enough to tell me what was really happening. She chose deception every single time. That was not a mistake or a moment of weakness. That was a pattern of behavior that revealed who she really was. I told Caroline that I wanted a divorce on a Sunday evening, exactly 5 weeks after I discovered the pills. I told her that I had thought about this carefully, that I had considered every possible option, and that I had made up my mind. I could not stay married to her. The trust between us was gone, and I did not believe it could ever be rebuilt. She broke down completely when she heard this, worse than she had during the initial confrontation. She fell to her knees again, grabbed my hands, and begged me to reconsider. She said she would do anything, absolutely anything, if I would just give her one more chance. She promised to address all her issues related to pregnancy and motherhood. She said she would even have children if that were what it took to save our marriage. She would face her fears and go through with pregnancy and become the mother I wanted her to be, if only I would stay. That offer might have tempted me a few weeks earlier, back when I was still trying to make sense of everything and desperately searching for a way to save what we had. But by the time she made it, I understood why I could never accept. I did not want a child born to a mother who agreed to pregnancy only to avoid divorce. I did not want to bring a new life into the world with someone who had spent years making sure that exact thing would not happen. What kind of parent would Caroline be to a child she never truly wanted? What kind of family would we be raising a baby in a marriage defined by resentment and coercion? Even if she somehow managed to go through with it, even if she carried a pregnancy to term and held our baby in her arms, I would never be able to forget how we got there. I would look at my child and remember that their mother had to be backed into a corner before she would agree to have them. That was not the foundation I wanted for my family. But more than that, more than the question of children, I simply could not rebuild trust with someone who had proven herself capable of such extensive and convincing deception. If she could do all of that so smoothly, so naturally, how could I ever believe anything she said again? How could I lie next to her at night without wondering what else she might be hiding? The person I thought I married did not exist. She was a character Caroline had created to keep me happy and oblivious, and I had fallen in love with a performance rather than a real human being. Even after getting the divorce papers, Caroline didn't stop trying to change my mind. She has enlisted friends and family members to reach out on her behalf. People who gently suggest that maybe I am being too harsh, that perhaps she deserves another chance, that maybe couples counseling could help us work through this. Her mother called me and said she understood I was hurt, but that Caroline truly loved me and was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. I listened politely and thanked her for caring, but I did not change my position. The people advocating for Caroline only know her side of the story, and even if they knew the whole truth, they cannot understand what it feels like to be in my shoes. They see a woman who made a mistake and is desperate to fix it. I saw a woman who stole years of my life and let me suffer for something that was entirely within her control. What I have learned from this experience is something I wish I had understood before I ever got married. Love is not enough to sustain a relationship. Love without honesty is just a pretty cage that keeps you trapped in someone else's version of reality. Caroline loved me, or at least she loved the version of our life that she had constructed, but she did not respect me enough to tell me the truth, and without that respect, her love was meaningless. Trust is the foundation that everything else is built upon, and once that foundation cracks, nothing standing on top of it is safe anymore. I trusted my wife completely, and she used that trust to manipulate me for years. I will never make that mistake again. I am still processing everything that has happened, and I know it will take a long time before I feel like myself again. But I am also hopeful, in a cautious and guarded way, about what comes next. Somewhere out there is the authentic partnership I always dreamed of, a relationship built on honesty and mutual respect, where both people know exactly what they are signing up for. Somewhere out there is a woman who will want the same things I like and who will tell me the truth even when it is hard. Somewhere out there is the family I still dream about, children raised by parents who chose each other fully and freely without secrets or deception. I do not know when I will find that future, or if I ever will, but I know it is not possible inside my current marriage. Caroline and I are done, and no amount of begging, promising, or crying will change my mind. Some trust, once broken, cannot be repaired, and some lies, once told, cannot be forgiven.